Today on the Illini Inquirer podcast, let's get you ready for Illinois football's penultimate, I used a big word, game of the 2025 regular season. The Illini head to Madison to take on the struggling Wisconsin Badgers, though they did pull off a ranked upset win over Washington just a couple weeks ago, gave Indiana a scare last week in the first half, down just 3 points before the Hoosiers do what the Hoosiers do, and a 31-7 victory over the Badgers. But Wisconsin a little feisty since Luke Fickell got his vote of confidence. We talk with Payne Blazevich about what Illinois is facing in these Wisconsin Badgers. He writes for Badger 24/7. He'll join us to break it all down and what are the vibes in Madison. And then Joey Wagner joins me for our weekly six-pack of questions about the Illini and the matchup heading into Madison, Wisconsin. We talk about that next, so let's get Payne Blazevich on next for the Illini Inquirer podcast. Illini fans, Game Day Spirit is back to offering Illini Inquirer listeners an exclusive discount on Illini merch. Shop with them at GameDaySpirit.com for the best selection of Fighting Illini merchandise you'll find anywhere. You'll find great products from brands like Nike, Champion, Johnny O, and more, and you're guaranteed to find something you like for any Illini fan on your shopping list. Take 15% off your next order by using code Illini15 at checkout. That's 15% off your next order at GameDaySpirit.com by using code Illini15 at checkout. They also just announced the date of their Winter Stadium sale, so make sure to mark Saturday, December 6th on your calendar. For those of you who haven't been, this is a massive sale on Illini gear that takes place twice a year in Memorial Stadium, where you can save big on Illini gear. Products up to 80% off, and they'll even have a selection of Fighting Illini equipment room gear, just like the players and coaches wear. You won't want to miss Stadium Sale on Saturday, December 6th from 9 to 1 at Memorial Stadium. Brought to you by the official fan store of the Fighting Illini, Game Day Spirit. All right, happy to get on the Wisconsin perspective of this side of the Illinois-Wisconsin matchup. He's Payne Blazevich, who works for Badger 24/7, our great Wisconsin site here at 24/7. Payne making his debut on the Illini Inquirer podcast. How are you, Payne?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing great, Jeremy. Thank you for having me on and ready to talk some ball.
Yeah, so, all right, let's start here. What are the vibes right now in Madison with the football team here?
You know, it's a difficult question to answer now than it would have been a couple of weeks ago. Wisconsin went on a run of losing 6 straight games. The vibes were not good, but they were able to muscle out a ranked win over Washington, 13-10. It was Wisconsin's first ranked win since 2021. So, that reversed course a little bit. Obviously, went on the road, lost substantially to number 2 Indiana, like a lot of teams have. So it's been kind of tricky to say. I think these last couple of games against Illinois and at Minnesota are really going to determine sort of the vibe heading into the offseason for Wisconsin.
I know the schedule is just absolutely brutal coming into the year. And I didn't have huge expectations for Wisconsin because of that. They had some turnover. But what has gone so wrong on the field this year?
I think the first thing that I would say is injuries. Wisconsin's down to its 4th quarterback, 3rd running back. They've had several injuries along the offensive line, on the defense, just in several key spots. Wisconsin has lost major contributors or starters, obviously quarterback being number 1. Their preseason starter, Billy Edwards Jr., has played 2 quarters this entire season. Their backup, Danny O'Neal, just got hurt in the Washington game. So it's kind of been that, change, loss of production that has made it difficult for this team to kind of establish a rhythm. And also, they just haven't played to the standard that they had expected this season. Players haven't been making plays. There's been a lot of change in the rotation. They've needed to see some true freshmen come in and kind of start making an impact. So sort of that mix of injury and not meeting expectation that has led to sort of this substantial losing streak across the season.
How was it received when Chris McIntosh, the AD there, came out and gave the vote of confidence for one more year of Luke Fickell, saying we're going to invest more in the program? Just take me, what was your perspective? What was the fans' perspective of that?
Yeah, well, the fans' perspective, truly, it wasn't good. And that was when Wisconsin still had not beaten a Power 4 team to that point in the season. So there wasn't a lot of optimism. This team hadn't really shown what it can do against even equal competition, much less, sort of the conference championship aspirations that they had when Luke Fickell arrived. And for me personally, we sort of had the vibe midway through the season that they weren't quite sure they were ready to move on from Luke Fickell just because the investment, it truly hadn't been there. And with the way this coaching carousel has kind of unfolded, it didn't seem like the Wisconsin leadership was really ready to jump all in, make the investment to pay a buyout, to pay a whole new staff, to pay for your roster for next season. So it sort of seemed like the vibe was going to invest in the roster, invest in the portal, invest in the staff, and, see what we can kind of get going for next season. And, that just so happened that was before Wisconsin had gotten that ranked win over Washington. So we'll kind of need to see how the vibe continues to unfold. But at the very least, when it happened, the vibe was not good.
Yeah. So let me follow up there. And maybe I'm asking you a question that you shouldn't have to answer, but investing more in football, I never thought that would be a problem for Wisconsin, given what the success they had. So what's the reasoning behind maybe lagging behind some of these? I mean, Illinois, Indiana has invested a lot in football here recently. So maybe why is Wisconsin, this program that had been so stable, why did they kind of lag behind?
I just think it was a lack of preparation and a lack of being able to read the college landscape. Maybe just not understanding that when all of these programs are investing and you're not, they're going to start to pull ahead of you. And I think Wisconsin may have thought that they could kind of get by doing more with less. That's sort of, the way that they've operated the program. But truthfully, they've fallen so far behind even, teams that are, the old school Big Ten West conference opponents. They've fallen behind those programs. So there needed to be a change in mindset, a change in, infrastructure, a change in process. But yeah, truthfully, they did not respond to NIL rev share the way that they probably should have, and it set them behind.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the team on the field here. Carter Smith now at quarterback, the fourth quarterback, and you throw a true freshman who's very talented. I mean, very highly regarded prospect. Obviously had a limited offense with him. I'm sure they never thought he would have to play this year. So how are they kind of working him in? How are they building up the offense around him? And how much do you expect them to expand it a little bit more as he's gotten more games under his belt?
Yeah, so the plan was originally for Carter Smith to sort of come in different quarterback option packages against Washington, but that plan had to change quickly when Danny O'Neal, their starter, had gotten injured and was out for the game. So Carter Smith kind of saw an increase in play relatively quickly, performed well. He kind of gave that team a spark in the run game. The passing game was limited in his first outing, but we saw that improve against Indiana. I think he threw for 98 yards and a touchdown, had Wisconsin's longest completion in 2 months. So the flashes have been there. I would expect that as he gets more acclimated to the starting role, as he sees, more reps on the practice field with the ones, we could expect him to probably throw the ball a little bit more. But I think Wisconsin's taking the approach of letting him do what he can do, not putting too much on his plate right now, and just giving him the throws that they know that he can make, the short yardage, screen passes, quick reads, just a way to get him into a rhythm, and then really utilizing the option game, because he's a player that can make plays with his legs. He's a physical guy. But, I'd expect that, Wisconsin to continue sort of increasing his workload, increasing his responsibility, but they're in no rush to throw the whole offense on his plate right now.
So you mentioned it, banged up at running back, banged up on the offensive line. How do they find success offensively? I mean, Illinois' defense isn't great. It's played better the last couple of weeks against these bottom half Big Ten teams. But how do they find success against Illinois, do you think?
Yeah, no, it's tough to say. The offensive line has, with the injuries that they've needed to manage, that group has started to improve week over week. But Wisconsin's running back Gideon Ituka, who's really come on over the past couple of weeks, he took a big hit against Indiana, unfortunately had to be carted off the field, was taken to the hospital. Now, in the immediacy, it sounds like he's okay. He even flew home with the team that night, but we can't really say what that means for his availability this week. And if he's not able to go, Wisconsin's running back room has been banged up. They're going to have to rely on Darian Dupree, who's working back from injury himself. Their starter, Dylan Jones, is out for the season. One of their other reserve backs, Cade Giacomelli, has been injured as well. So it's a hampered group. And, Wisconsin has seen some progress in the run game when those guys are healthy, but depending on the availability, it's kind of hard to say where they're going to find that offensive spark.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the defense side of the ball. A lot of hope and optimism on that side of the ball. I mean, watching Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano, those guys are dudes, and they're just freshmen right now. They've kind of given a huge jolt. So I mentioned them, but just what has gone into this defense, being able to limit a Washington offense that just crushed Illinois. And then, Indiana, that's an unbelievable offense, and they held them to 10 points in the first half. So what's gotten into that defense? What's made them good?
Like you said, it really has been those two guys. Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano aren't just playing well for freshmen. They're playing like some of the best linebackers in the league. And they were truly the impetus for Wisconsin's defense to hold Washington, a proficient Washington offense, to just 10 points. And Mason Posa, he's a playmaker. He can get behind the line of scrimmage. He can get his hands on the ball and make plays to set up Wisconsin's offense. And then Cooper Catalano, he's an efficient, productive, physical guy in the middle of the defense. And both those guys can get after the quarterback. They were getting after Fernando Mendoza over the weekend. But also, Wisconsin's defensive front has just been a stout unit all season. Their defensive line, outside linebackers have been able to consistently get into the backfield, make plays in the pass rush. Guys like Mason Reiger, Sebastian Cheeks, Daryl Peterson, they're guys that can come in and make a play immediately. And Wisconsin's defensive front is stout. They've really locked down the run game. They're at one point in the season, they were top 10 in the nation in run defense. And it's really helped an injured, hampered back end for Wisconsin's defense. So that group is going to rely on the defensive front to make plays behind the line of scrimmage, to really stuff the run, to give this back end as much help as possible.
Yeah, you mentioned those edge rushers, really good. I would imagine the game plan is hope you can stop the run to put Luke Altmaier in third and longs, because the secondary, what have been their issues? I know they've struggled a little bit, but the pass rush of Wisconsin certainly seems to help them.
Yeah, so part of it was one of Wisconsin's starting safeties, Preston Zachman. He was injured and has been out since, I believe, week 3. So they've been kind of shorthanded there. And at the cornerback position, they've just kind of been trying to get guys up to speed. Their veteran, Ricardo Hallman, saw kind of a slow start to the year, but he's really come on as of late. So that group, truthfully, has just needed some help. And the defensive pressure up front has been incredibly beneficial for that group. And they've made some plays on the ball recently, but with a experienced quarterback like Luke Altmaier, that's certainly a concern for Wisconsin's defense.
All right, so what's this game against Illinois mean for Wisconsin?
I think it's crucial. It's Wisconsin's next opportunity to kind of show that progress is legit and that it's repeatable, because, Wisconsin, or the Washington game, truly could have been a flash in the pan. It's hard to say right now. And they've had 4 ranked games in a row, and 3 of them have been against top 10 teams. Like, it's tough to judge where this team is at right now, truly. Of course, Illinois is another ranked opponent in that stretch, but Wisconsin at least has an opportunity to show where the growth is, to show where they need to continue to improve. And if they can find a way to muddy this game up, play it competitive, or even come out with a win, that'd be critical for this team as they're trying to kind of reverse course and build some momentum into the offseason. So it's really crucial for them to come out and have a good performance and at least keep things competitive here moving forward.
I think you mentioned it, but I was going to ask what must happen for Wisconsin to pull this off. I mean, I think the Washington win expectancy was like 14%. It was pretty crazy to force that turnover, but the defense balled out. Muddying it up, is that the key to all of this turnovers, muddying it up?
I really think it's Wisconsin's only true path to victory. And like you had mentioned in the Washington game, all of those high leverage, high impact plays that Wisconsin's defense could have made, they did make. They forced fumbles, they found interceptions, they had several tackles for loss. Like, all of the plays that Wisconsin's defense needed to make to set up the offense with short yardage, they made. And so it's difficult to expect them to make all of those moving forward, especially against an experienced team like Illinois. But that is Wisconsin's best path, best opportunity to come away with a win.
All right, last thing for you. I know it was a rough recruiting day on Wednesday for Wisconsin. What's that like moving forward for Luke Fickell, who got the vote of confidence, but it seems like recruits are a little leery of whether that's a long-term thing.
Yeah, it's tumultuous right now. And until we get to signing day, it's kind of hard to see where that class is going to end up. But there's some work to be done. Right now, they don't have an offensive lineman committed in their 2026 class. A few of their highest ranked recruits right now have been crystal balled to go to other places. So Wisconsin's staff has had to do a lot of work to keep this group together. There's a strong core right now with some of those guys who have posted that they are fully bought in and committed to this program. But this stretch towards signing day is going to be a crazy one. And it's kind of difficult to project just where this class is going to end up right now.
Payne Blazevich, Badger 24/7, part of a great crew there covering Wisconsin. I know it's been a tough fall, but you guys are covering the heck out of it. Great job, Payne. We'll talk to you on Saturday at the game, man.
Appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
One of my favorite things about waking up in the morning is coffee, and it's even better if you get it from Columbia Street Roastery. And the best thing to do around the holidays is give coffee, and they got a great way of doing that. Columbia Street Roastery, if you go to csrcoffee.com, they have a subscription box that you can get. Each month, Columbia Street sends you freshly roast coffee of 3 different half-pound bags. You can get from their flavored coffee box, their dark roast, their medium roast, their decaf box, and you can get a subscription for $25 per month. What a great way and what a great gift to give. Or if you want to get something for yourself, go to csrcoffee.com. Check out all their fall flavors, all their great brews, and they also have tea and hot cocoa. So go check them out at csrcoffee.com. And our listeners, you get 10% off your first order if you use the code GOILLINI2025. Again, go to visit csrcoffee.com, get 10% off your first order with the code GOILLINI2025. You get free shipping on orders over $45. That's all at Columbia Street Roastery at csrcoffee.com. All right, welcome in Joey Wagner now to talk Illinois side of the Illinois-Wisconsin matchup, 6:30 Saturday. Joey and I, big fans of the 6:30 kickoffs to end the season, but nobody wants to hear the journalists whine about late nights. But we got late nights here, Joey.
Yeah, no one wants to hear it.
But we will oblige.
It is what it is. It's not the most fun, but who really wants to listen to the two of us talk about how hard it is to stay up late and write about, talk about, and watch sports? I mean, it's a pretty charmed life in the big picture.
Yeah. All right. So Illinois football in the college football playoff rankings here, Joey, number 21. Just what was your quick reaction to that? Like I didn't even have a story prepared, to be honest with you, because I didn't know, like, I thought maybe they'd sneak in at 25, 24, but to jump all the way up to 21.
Yeah, I didn't know that this was going to be the week. The Rutgers and Maryland wins. I didn't know we're going to be kind of, I guess, nationally enough to put that. Obviously, you have to have some things around you happen. And on Saturday, when the bottom of the top 25 kind of fell out, you thought, oh, maybe there's an opportunity here. I think there was a committee chair change too, if I'm not mistaken. And Bret Bielema today said he maybe kind of wondered if that would change some of the conversations during those rankings process. But here's the thing. I mean, we know Illinois is not going to the playoff. That's very clear to all of us. To have that number by the program's name, in some ways, it's kind of a reminder of like, man, if you get that Washington game, what does this look like? I get that, but man, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to be in that top 25. I asked Bret Bielema about that today, and he said, you check your phone, and in particular, JUCO and transfer portal kids are very in tune to the college football landscape. What's going on? High school kids are kind of in their own world a lot of the times. And I mean, obviously they know the top 25 teams and kind of who's good, but I think there's probably a little bit more of an emphasis for JUCO, for portal kids. So like stuff like that matters when you're going into an off season, and it'll probably be our number one topic we discussed today. And you've got some cash and you've got some openings and you've got something to sell. It matters to be in that top 25, and how much it matters is going to vary on prospect, but it is certainly helpful as you go in and try to rebuild your roster, retool your roster.
Yeah, and I know I keep beating this drum, and I kind of apologize for it, but not really. It's just a reminder of how far you've come, that you were never in the college football playoff rankings from 2014 to 2021 when this thing became a thing. You didn't make one appearance. And over the last 3 years, Joey, what's their I don't know,
7th.
15, 16 polls. There's 4 per year of college football playoff rankings. You've been in 7 times so far. You're relevant. You are a second-tier Big Ten program over the last 4 years for the most part, and you are a top 25 program for the most part. Like, that's where a lot of people wanted to be 5 years ago when Bret Bielema was hired. So I get it. It does. It comes with that double-edged sword of, man, if our defense just would have showed up, if they would have had if Aaron Henry and his defensive staff would have come up with a game plan that let us be competitive, that gave Luke Altmaier a chance, would they be number 12 or 11 right now, going into the final 2 weeks where you're set up pretty well to win games, and then maybe some other teams lose some games and you find a way to sneak into the college football playoff? I get that, but you also could be 5-5 or something like that going into these final 2 games and not really relevant at all. So I just think it's a sign again of how far this program has come. And again, I'm not bored with Illinois being number 21 in the college football playoff rankings. And now we'll see if they can build on it, Joey, and rise and be like, get to number 16, 15. Maybe that'll make it more painful again that you lost to Washington. And I get it. You're really disappointed you didn't compete too much against Ohio State because of the poor start. You obviously got blown out by Indiana, who's an unbelievable team. But this is a nice step forward to sustaining success. And that's what these last 2 weeks are about, is just building on that and making this season feel even better, because it should feel good. Nick Osen, our Wisconsin side, asked me to grade the season. I said a B, but that's because college football playoff and you weren't that competitive against those programs. But this is still a good season so far for Illinois. And there haven't been a lot of good seasons leading into the Bret Bielema era. So to have 3 out of 4 is pretty good. Yeah,
you're right. I think that the way you phrase it's the exact right way is you're not going to get bored with being 21. That doesn't mean it's okay to forever be 21, right? Like Bret Bielema doesn't want to forever be 21. Bret Bielema doesn't forever want to be 22, 23, 24, 25. You want to push the envelope. You want to get in there. You want to be that second tier, B tier Big Ten team that crashes that playoff one year and finds your way in. And even if it's a one and done somewhere in South Bend or somewhere down, you go to SEC country a little bit, you're there. And that's a really big selling point. And hell, maybe you put one together, right? Maybe you put something together and get hot in there. You could give yourself the chance. But yeah, you can't get bored with being relevant. Relevance is not boring. And I think that is a big thing.
As a Bears fan, I can say that for sure right now. No, we're probably not a 7-3 team, but I'll take it. I will take it right now.
Really? You're going to do that to me every time?
You're going to end up with a better record than us. I'm just going to enjoy being relevant right now. And maybe in 3 years, when Caleb Williams is entering his, we got to extend him, I'll be like, no, now it's time to win the NFC North or win the NFC Championship, but not yet. Not yet.
And there you go, right? Like that's – you mentioned Indiana, and we've talked about this. And I have a stat later that's kind of crazy as it relates to Wisconsin, but Indiana, I looked through some Big Ten rankings. Indiana changed the reasonable expectations for building programs that had really struggled. Yeah. This is such an outlier. I'm not saying you should not try to achieve what Indiana is achieving, because of course you're pumping money, you're funneling money, you're printing money, you're doing all these things, and you're relevant as hell. And everyone's talking about you. You obviously want to try to do that. But if you historically look, that is such an outlier. That is Curt Cignetti is awesome at what he does. He is perhaps the best coach in America. That does not happen many times in college football, where a team goes from where Indiana was to holy crap, they're running over everybody and they're not looking back. That is such a disparity in reality. But with the portal, you can't really say 5-6 year rebuilding plans, but you can understand that, hey, it doesn't happen overnight. 21 is good now. In 2 years, 21 probably won't be good.
Yeah.
Right. And in 3 years, 21 probably won't be good, but understand the build. And if you don't have the patience for it, and I understand the portal skews patience a little bit with the way you can rebuild a team, but damn, relevance is not boring, Jeremy.
Yeah. I also think this game's a reminder of how much has changed in the last 3 years since Illinois last went to Madison. I mean, think of that.
A Freaky Friday gift to me this week.
Yeah, I sent a Freaky Friday gift because these programs have just completely changed places in the Big Ten. Wisconsin, is, I think, over the last 4 seasons, they're now 13-23 in the Big Ten, and I believe Illinois is 19-16 in the Big Ten, somewhere around there. I still update my numbers. But of the teams that have been in the Big Ten the past 4 seasons, Illinois is 5th in wins in the Big Ten. Wisconsin is bottom 3. They're only above Purdue and Michigan State. That's another example of how far you can fall and how quickly is Michigan State. They have completely switched places in the Big Ten as Bret Bielema and Chase Brown and Tommy DeVito went up there. Did DeVito have 3 rushing touchdowns in that game, I believe? All sneaks.
Yeah, all 3 sneaks, yeah.
Chase Brown with some big runs in that one. Defense was dominant. And Paul Chryst gets fired, and all of a sudden they hire Luke Fickell, and it's just gone terribly. He's 16-20 overall. We'll get into that a little bit, but it's just a reminder, like, how many people would have loved to have switched places with Wisconsin 5 years ago, and that's happened. Like, Illinois is now what Wisconsin was, and Wisconsin is now what Illinois was.
Yeah, it's one of those things that didn't happen overnight, but it feels like it did, right? It feels like that 2022 trip changed everything. And then, honestly, they hire Luke Fickell. I don't want to get ahead of it because we're going to talk about this in point 2, but I really thought that was Wisconsin's push to establish its footing again in that top tier and then push even further, because Luke Fickell has had a lot of success, Wisconsin notwithstanding, as a head coach. So the fact that it hasn't gone that way is crazy. But yeah, they absolutely switched spots, and now it's your top tier, and then you've got your Iowas, Illinois,
USC probably in there still. Washington,
yeah, because the top tier is very much Ohio State. I still think Penn State will get it right. Penn State's going to be in there. Michigan,
Oregon, and Michigan,
yeah. Illinois jumped into that.
Yeah, pretty good. All right, let's Illinois, a 7.5 point favorite, opened as a 9.5 point favorite. So that line's moved to Wisconsin here a little bit, but let's dive into our 6-pack of questions as we do every week, Joey. And let's start with this one. What did you make of Bret Bielema's comments about the transfer portal and the Illini's financial capabilities? I thought that was one of the headlines out of his Monday presser. And I asked him a little bit about how the transfer portal and the calendar affects things. And here's a little bit of what he said. The portal dates are just what everybody writes. People are pre-portaling, and agents are reaching out to people all over the places. I think December will be unprecedented in activity that maybe isn't in the viewing for the outside public, except for those 14 teams that have transitioned. That I think is going to be insane. I think there's going to be a lot of coach swapping, not coordinators. I'm talking about head coaches. I think there's going to be a domino effect of several head coaches who are going to be transitioning from where they're currently at to new position. That creates a ripple effect on rosters that is unprecedented. And Doug Bouchon from On3 asked Bret about, does he have the financial resource to be competitive in recruiting and the transfer portal? And Bret said, what Josh Whitman and our university administration has done, we work hand in hand every day with our administration. Josh is so in front of everything. It's just really awesome to be equipped with that. I do wish the NCAA would help us out and let us know exactly what our rules are a little bit more in advance of where we're at. We're ahead of it as best as we humanly can, but I should have the opportunity, have the biggest opportunity financially that I've ever had here at Illinois. Of course, I always want more. He went on to say he doesn't have the 30 or 40 million. But in my conversations with people, Joey, NIL still feels like it's a real thing. Beyond just the revenue sharing dollars that the players are going to have, like NIL still is big here. But what did you make of that? What Bret Bielema had to say?
They know they've got a heavy roster turnover, right? And that heavy roster turnover in 2025 means, for a lack of a better term, cap space turnover. When you're turning over such talented players at high dollar positions, you're looking at outside linebacker, left tackle, quarterback. I mean, those are premium positions that make a lot of money. So Illinois is going to have money to go out there and do that. And look, is it the top end, as Bret Bielema said? No. Is it enough, do I think, for Bret Bielema, his front office, his coaching staff? Front office sounds weird.
I love how you call it front office. That's what it is. I mean, his recruiting department is a front office. Like, Pat Hamilton's the GM, and he's got scouting directors, pro personnel, right? Like college personnel, high school personnel. It's set up like an NFL front office.
Yeah. Is that enough for Illinois to get what Bret Bielema feels like they need to get? They seem to think so. Right, it reminds me a little bit of in the spring. I think it was the spring when Bret Bielema basically went to like a post-spring practice availability and all but held up a sign that said, if you can punt, we would love to have you. Do you remember that? Where he like very much was like, we'll take a punter here if you've got one. That's kind of what it feels like. Okay, we've got money. We're going to be open for this. It's probably not top end of the country money, but I think they sound like they've got enough to do to rebuild this roster, and they've got an appetite to do it. Right? I think that's probably the biggest thing. They are a developmental program, and that you will hear that, you have heard that time over time, but you also have to have an appetite for improvement. I think that became very clear during that second open week where he told us, like, this is kind of an audition for 2026. I'm paraphrasing only a little bit there. That basically tells me, all right, we're ready to go. And to have this kind of cap turnover, to have this roster turnover when the coaching carousel's insane and the portal's going to go crazy, maybe that's an opportune time for Illinois to have snaps available, dollars available, and an interest available.
Yeah, and you're seeing Wisconsin be like, oh, we need to invest more money. Like, we got to put more money into this. I don't think Illinois is having that problem. They just had $100 million donation to their program. And again, while they can say that's not earmarked exactly for players, that lifts all boats in the program and allows them to go to other people for money to raise it for player acquisition and all of that. And of course, the revenue sharing dollars, Josh Whitman is said he's going to fully be on board with that. So, I mean, that's $12 to $14 million on your football roster just right there. Yeah, like, I think they got middle tier Big Ten resources. And I think that doesn't mean you're going to go get the top 100, like 10 guys of the top 100 transfers and get all these headlines. Cause I don't know how often that actually wins games is getting all those guys, but I think you're going to be
Texas Tech right now.
Yeah. Texas Tech surely does. Yeah. But I don't think Illinois is going to be that, right? Like Texas Tech.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Top tier. Oregon is the top tier. But you can be in the market for some really high level transfers and then have the money to go find starters and add depth in many places. And boy, they need it in a lot of places. And Joey, I do love that he's treating this like professional football right now. I mean, he's telling his players that, hey, if you don't show us during these off weeks or during bowl practices that you're ready to impact our team, like, we pay you now. I'm kind of you taking his words and running with it a little bit, but we're paying you now. Like, if you're not good enough to make an impact on a roster, we might go find somebody else. All right, to take your job and pay him more, and time for you to look somewhere else. Like, that's what it is now in college sports, when that's the other side of paying these players. And Bret Bielema, Bart Miller, I know you talked to about how that's a change. That's a change for them, that they care all about these relationships, but they also got to care about winning. And if you're going to pay these players, the other side of it is if they're not producing for you, you're going to go find somebody else who can do it a little bit better. So I think Illinois is in a great spot because they have competitive resources. They have winning to sell. They have development to sell, NFL draft. And I think that's only going to get better because I think they're going to have multiple guys get drafted this year. And maybe there are a lot of day 3 picks, but these are guys that, whether it's a Matthew Bailey or Gabe Akis or Xavier Scott or, offensive line wise, Melvin Priestley and JC Davis. These weren't guys that came into college football thinking they were going to get drafted. So that development is really strong. Luke Altmaier, another great example of that. Hank Beatty, another great example of that. So I think they got a really, really strong sell. Love that they have the resources to go be competitive, Joey. Doesn't mean they're going to have a top 10 transfer class, but I think they're going to add some really good talent here, and they have the appetite, as you said, to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're going to have a top 10 class. Doesn't mean there's not going to be guys that you think are going to be awesome and aren't, right? Like, that is part of recruiting at literally every level: high school, JUCO, transfer portal. There's going to be someone that next October, it's going to be like, why in the world isn't he playing more or playing better? That's part of it. Like, it's not 100% hit rate, but that's why you boosted your front office to get ahead of this and to really do those deep dives. How do they fit with you? How do they fit within your scheme and your building? Like, all of those things are designed to maximize those hit rates. When you're not working with $40 or $50 million, you do have to hit more. I'm not excusing misses. You have to hit more on those. And that's what boosted up, inflated front offices are really designed to do and get out ahead of that.
Yeah, and like, I think of last year, there's not a lot of misses. Outright. I mean, Terrence Brooks 2 years ago was a miss, right? Like, that they would admit that. But this year, like, Justin Bullock's made an impact. Hudson Clement is making a huge impact right now. Cole Russ 2 years ago is making an impact. Christian Abney, right, is finding a way to get on the field and make an impact. The defensive line guys, maybe there's not a superstar there, but James Thompson's one of their best defensive linemen. Kurt Neal is part of the rotation. Tommy Wadurjai is a good starter. Leon Lowry's made some impacts this year. So, I mean, you got to go down to like Tyler McMillan for me to think of a guy.
That's
Hey,
right, yeah.
you didn't get that one. All right. But they've done a really good job. And you mentioned something about how they fit in the building. They've done a pretty good job of that. Like the personal evaluation of how do they fit into that. Because you can go and get a lot of players, but how are they going to play when they're not producing? Like for Hudson Clement to battle through not getting the ball as much as he did at West Virginia and keep plugging along, coaches rave about him, and now he's making that star kind of impact. That's a kudos to him and kudos a little bit to their evaluation of the person, not just the player.
Yeah, the only last thing is we've now talked about this for a little bit, and the question everyone's asking is, what are they going to do at quarterback? I don't know. I don't know. You know what? I would imagine they're going to get in the portal. I don't know comfortably enough to say that definitively, right? But it seems the way Bret Bielema talked to sell what makes sense just from consuming college football, consuming roster building. But I think what I'm seeing and just the way that Bret Bielema is talking about where they are financially, I wonder what that'll mean for them in terms of what kind of quarterback they can bring in, what level. I don't expect them to go fishing in the deep seas of quarterback portal recruiting.
Can I just throw one out? Like if Lenora Sellers got into the portal, I don't think Illinois is swimming in that pool. But that next pool, like the next Luke Altmaier, a guy who's I think that is the ideal. Is maybe it's a grad transfer from a lower level, but I think you got to have talent in the Big Ten. So I think it's a guy on a good team behind a really good college quarterback who probably is not getting his opportunity yet because you could probably get him a little cheaper. And he can compete for the job. You're not giving him the job right away. But there's the talent and the upside and a little bit of college experience, just like with Luke, where he gets that opportunity. Like I don't know if you go find another Ethan Hampton or John Paddock. Like since you already got a guy like Ethan Hampton, I think you go get a guy that's got a higher pedigree.
Yeah, and I don't even know what the pool of Tommy DeVitos are, right? Where you kind of a late in your career benching at your last school. I don't know if there's a lot of that out there either. It definitely feels like, and coaching changes might open up some of these things, right? But it definitely feels to me like that high pedigree out of high school, not really given the opportunity or finding the opportunity and then seeing if you can develop that somewhere else. That I would imagine is a sweet spot because you're right. You've got Ethan Hampton for the older guy in the room with experience. You've got the younger guy in the room who's oozes with talent in Carson Boyd. You probably need to find a middle ground there if you can and see what that can do. And that might fit in financially to where Illinois needs to be because there are. I mean, you are going to have to allocate money to some really key positions, some really expensive positions on the rest of your roster.
One thing I like, and they had Alfred Washington, the JUCO commit this week. I think he's depth. I think he's competition. I'm not slotting him into a starting spot, but maybe eventually he can be. I do like that they're going hard over some of these JUCO offensive tackles, TJ Taylor, Micah Madalau, because those guys probably come cheaper than the guys who are going to come in the portal. Not that they're, cheap, and they're going to get paid, but like getting some of those pieces from the JUCO level that at least can compete for these starting jobs. Secondary is a spot. I think they could add somebody like that. If you can add some of those before the portal opens up, that'd be a good thing too, Joey.
Yeah, the last point I want to make, I'm glad you mentioned that. And I think the offensive line is where you're going to see the volume of additions because of what you turn over. And just as importantly, because you had a recruiting class in 2022 that isn't even in the offensive line anymore. Like you lost an entire recruiting class. I will be curious. I do want to see how it shakes out after this offseason on the offensive line, as you've had those 23, 24, 25 kids developing in your system. Do you have to go out and really fight and push and scratch and claw for offensive linemen in the portal, or can you let that development really take shape? Like, is this the last time you have to really, really go in very heavy on the offensive line in the transfer portal or JUCO? Like, you'll always add, but it's just going to be the biggest volume we see for a while.
The good thing about the portal, man, you don't have to rebuild every year at every position or have to go through those growing pains. Like you might have some growing pains, but you can go find some guys who can fill in right away. All right. Number 2, Illinois plays Wisconsin this weekend, and they're not very good, Joey. They've not been very good under Luke Fickell. I think we all thought was a home run hire when they hired him away from Cincinnati after making a college football playoff. And as you kind of said, I think they thought Fickell could take them to that next level, to be Penn State, to be Michigan, something like that. And boy, it has gone the opposite way, but he gets a vote of confidence for a year after starting 3-7 this year, 1-6 in the Big Ten. So what do you make of Wisconsin keeping Luke Fickell for another year?
Yeah, so there's really, it appears as you look around the college football coaching landscape, there's two really fields of thought. Pull the plug, pay the buyout, hire a new staff, move forward, and go from there. Obviously, you've seen some heavy programs, big name programs do that. The other field of the other line of thinking you've seen is, okay, instead of paying buyout money to a coach and a coaching staff and then turning around and spending money on a new coaching staff, let's just pump money into the program. That's kind of the go-to thing. Is let's make sure the resources go up. That's the path that Wisconsin is taking. I don't know where I'm at on that because apathy is a problem. Like if you run into fan apathy, that makes, I mean, that's hard. It's hard to overcome when you run into it. I think Wisconsin has probably long-term built itself up enough that fan apathy in totality is going to be hard to reach, but you're trending in a way that people are frustrated.
I don't know.
Frustrated is not. I think there's a lot of. I think there's more wiggle room at Wisconsin to fight apathy because of what they've been, but they're starting to get mad, right? Like fans are starting to get mad in Madison, or maybe they've been mad for a little while longer. But the thing that I'm really struggling to reckon with, and what you've seen around college football, is coaching changes don't happen in December anymore. Coaching hires happen in December. Coaching changes happen in October and early November. That you've got to get a head start on it to build your next roster. You can't start the hiring process late and then you're just behind the eight ball. So bringing Luke Fickell back and putting this money into the program, what if it doesn't work? Is it really worth the 4 or 5 games next season that you would have him as your coach before you would, I would imagine, have to make a change, right? You can't let it go in to December. So you're basically saying you get 4 or 5 more games after this season and see where you're at like that.
Mike
is that better?
That's what Mike Gundy did.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Changed over his whole staff. They try and fix it. And it's like, who are you going to get in the portal when you don't have money? And they don't think you're going to win it all. And they can see that you have a 1-year leeway. Yeah. And same thing, a little bit of Florida, though there was a little bit of momentum there. And at least there's some resources. I don't get it. It seems like they're crying poor at Wisconsin, which I cannot understand how Indiana and Illinois and some of these programs in the Big Ten have just invested so much in football, and Wisconsin just thought it was all.
That's where I guess my issue is that clearly when you say put money in, that's 4 players, for the goodness sake. That's what you mean. They've been very active in transfer portal additions because they've lost a lot of people in the transfer portal. But like, you can't be as active as they are in the portal and make me think like, they just don't have enough. They don't have, like, you're getting a lot of guys. So like, clearly you've got some money to move around there.
Listen, I think Luke Fickell is a good coach, and it just has gone terribly for him. I think the Phil Longo hire obviously did not go well for him. I don't think he followed up with a good hire with Jeff Grimes. Clearly has had terrible injury luck. The schedule has been brutal for them, and I get that it gets a little bit better next year. But you still got Notre Dame, Penn State, Iowa, Pitt is on the roster. What is USC is on the schedule next year? What is success for them next year? Like to bring Fickell back, I think you got to have 8 wins, right? To really feel like you're going somewhere. They're hemorrhaging recruits right now because they can all see what is happening.
We've covered that, right? We've seen that and how hard it is to come out of that.
We just talked with Payne, and I talked to him afterwards. I've been there, man. Like, this is really hard to cover. I get it. I've been there because we have, but $20 million, I think, was his buyout. This could cost you way more than $20 if he fails next year. If he failed, like you talked about apathy, Joey, they're getting apathetic because there's hotels available in Madison. There's never hotels available in Madison when we go up and cover games up there. There are tickets available for $5 on StubHub for this game. Like that, there is apathy brewing. If you have another bad year, all of those decades of winning, you can lose a 5-10 year fan base there. Like, where that little generation just isn't into Wisconsin football, and you're not winning as much. And these other programs are winning, and they become cooler for the in-state prospects and all of that. Like, it's dangerous. It is dangerous to do what they are doing. And I just think you could go hire somebody who can do that job well. I think Lance Leipold could do where Jason Eck could do well there. Like, go after Matt Campbell. So, like, I was going to mention him. Like, there's so many people that I think could give you the infusion, because once you let this sit for another year, like, that's hard to come back from. And I think Luke Fickell's up against it. Like, I don't think this does him many favors by keeping him around, because going to the portal, you're going to have to overspend to get people to go there, because they're not going to believe it. Why would they believe in Wisconsin other than just going there for dollars? And then you wonder what kind of players you're actually getting there. So there's some good recruits like Mason Posa, Cooper Catalano we'll talk about here. There's some good young talents. They got to hit on a quarterback, man, and they got to keep them healthy.
Yeah, I do. My other point about apathy, and you've kind of shifted my line of thinking, I do think apathy is relative, because when I think of apathy, fan apathy, my brain is 2018 Illinois is hosting Northwestern. I'm thinking.
Yeah, I just think they're a bad year. I think they're a bad start away next year of that happening. I think that.
I guess, yeah. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around that level of physical attendance apathy at Camp Randall. So that's where I thought, like, that's what I think about when I think of just fan. So it's hard for me to imagine Wisconsin there. I do, obviously, the attendance, the interest is not what we've seen Wisconsin. Like, that is very much happening. The bottom falling out is hard for me to imagine.
That's the danger I think they're running, though, by doing this. Because if you hire a new coach, comes in, guns blazing, it's like, hey, we got hope, and people are going to buy tickets and they're going to be back into it, and he goes 7-5 the first year, you're going to feel like, yeah, we're off and running again. If Luke Fickell goes 4-8, man, next year, or 5-7, misses a bowl, or even just goes 6-6, like, against a soft schedule, I think that fan base is going to start being like, what is happening here? And of course, they can get a new coach after that, but it's just a wasted year. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, and the hard part is, again, like, I think those coaching changes, when you pull the plug like that, it's not it's a wasted year, but you're making that decision after a month and a half. And then you've got the interim, then you've got our guys going in the portal after, like, you've got so much moving around. And this is just not what anyone, like, this is the furthest thing from what I thought when Luke Fickell rolled into there with his press conference. Like, this was supposed to take them from, like, top of tier 2, right, to, like, tier 1.5, bottom tier 1. Like, this was supposed to push them firmly over the mark. And now they've been lapped. They've been passed. At this moment in time, Illinois has passed Wisconsin. Minnesota is better than Wisconsin. Like, then you bring in USC's obviously good. Washington better than Wisconsin. Like, all of these teams are passing Wisconsin, and then you look at the stats, you look at the eye test, and it is like, this is
brutal.
This is not just missing a bowl game because you fumbled against Northwestern in the final game of the season 100. Like, this is really bad football.
Yeah, I'm usually in favor of, like, stability. Hey, go through a bad year. Like, this is 3 bad years, and I just don't see, with the recruiting the way it's going, how they regain it. So if Luke Fickell does regain it, man, good for him. But it's just based on what we've seen from other programs and elsewhere. It's just, this has never been kind of a winning strategy. I mean, Dabo at Clemson feels like probably coming 2 years too late there. So just interesting to watch. All right, let's get into this actual game here, Joey. Number 3, how much are you buying into Illinois' recent defensive improvement, holding Rutgers and Maryland to a combined 19 points, a combined 114 rushing yards, at about 2.2 yards per clip there? How much you buying into Illinois' defense being competitive the rest of the way?
This is such a hedge. Out of 10, if we, like, out of 10, 5? Like, because I do, like, we have to acknowledge the last 2 offensive they've played are nowhere near as good as the other Power 4 offenses they've seen.
No, but Rutgers is good.
Rutgers is good. Rutgers is good. Like, that they made that offense look much worse than that Rutgers offense actually is. Like, Rutgers can throw that thing around. They can move the ball. I'm not all the way back in. Maybe I'm stung with that Washington game. Like, that's what we're talking about with the Illinois defense. Indiana, top to bottom, just disaster. Offense, defense, special teams, total nightmare of a game. Got out of hand immediately. Purdue, you're talking a couple busted coverages away from that looking a lot different on paper.
Yeah, I
You
thought
just
that was
are.
more execution than scheme. Yes.
Correct. Ohio State, your offense didn't put you in a good spot. Your offense put the defense in tough field positions. Now, would it, if Ohio State had to drive 80 yards every drive to go, would they have done it? Yeah, probably. They probably would have. Ohio State's a freak show. They honestly would have done that. But for
Illinois
what we
was
saw,
competitive. They stopped the run.
Yeah.
They didn't allow explosives against that team, but and Jeremiah Smith made some key third down conversions. But I thought they were competitive. Like that was a good, solid performance by Aaron Henry's career.
Now, saying all of this, you can't write off entirely what we've seen in the last 2 weeks. They have played much better. And I think Aaron Henry should get a heck of a lot more credit and his coaching staff and that defensive side of the ball for keeping that defense from totally splintering after Washington. That was really bad. And that is a player I would imagine could probably be pretty deflating when you feel like there's nothing you're being put in position to do to stop the bleeding. And you just have to go out there. Now, they didn't play very well in terms of tackling, but I didn't feel like they were in a position to be competitive. Like, so to rally those troops after that, after your playoff hopes have been dashed because of that game, like, you've got to give them credit for keeping that all the way together. They've been more aggressive in coverage. They've been more aggressive at getting after the quarterback. I feel like they've done the things that we podcasted in Washington. Like, why are you not doing these things? They're doing those things. So I think overlooking the last 2 games just because you're mad at the DC is foolish. Like, you have to acknowledge what they've done. I am just not all the way there. Yeah, I could be talked into a 6 out of 10 if you're wanting to try to do that. But I do think we have to acknowledge what they've done.
I would be like an 8 out of 10 on this defense being average, which is all they need. Like that is all you need. They were atrocious, and I put most of that on Aaron Henry and the defensive staff against Washington. That was just a terrible game plan, terrible adjustments throughout that game. Like, at some point you got to change what you're doing, and it just made no sense. So I thought that was more on the coaches than the players. The players obviously didn't play very well, but the game plan wasn't good enough. The other games, like Purdue, as you said, I thought was more execution. USC, I thought, was just USC's dudes making plays. So once
couple first rounders throwing it around, right?
Yeah, I don't know what Maeva is, but Mekhi Lemon sure is, and Maeva was fantastic in that game. And Indiana was a disaster on all accords. And yeah, Ohio State definitely was a couple first rounders making some plays in that game. And your offense was the bigger problem, and your special teams were the bigger problem in that game. So once Xavier Scott went out, I think we knew that this defense couldn't be great, and that certainly proved to be true. Washington was a disaster, and it's one that's hard to shake for a DC. But I agree with you. The last 2 weeks has made the adjustments they need to. Rutgers, they ran the ball well before playing Illinois too. Antoine Raymond had been really good, and Illinois made him a non-factor. They're just playing sound ball. They're playing faster, Joey. Matt Bailey said after the game, it's nothing really schematically we've changed. It's just we're playing faster, we're playing more aggressive, and I agree with him. And that's the adjustments I wish they would have made for Washington. They didn't. That was a failure on their part. But I do think going up against Northwestern and the number 106 offense in the country, in Wisconsin, and a number 116 offense in the country, I think Illinois' defense will get the job done to give the offense plenty of opportunities to win those games. So my confidence in them, the final 2 games, probably a 7 or an 8. But yeah, this is still at best an average mid defense, maybe sub average.
Yeah, I feel good about these last 2 games, and some of that is opponent dictated, right? I feel good about these last 2 games for you to give that offense a chance to just go to win out, to close out these last 4 games and close them out strong. I'm just really struggling to get the full Washington experience out of my brain, and maybe that's a me thing. I don't know.
It's the game of the year. It was the game of the year for Illinois, and there's just a terrible game plan, terrible coaching job in that game.
I will jump up to 6 out of 10 because I do think this can be average to a little bit below average Big Ten defense. I do think we will look back at some point and not excuse what you saw in some of those games, but I think context will be a lot easier to put in perspective in hindsight in terms of the offenses that they went against. Like, Indiana's so good. USC's so good. Ohio State. Washington is good. It's not as good as what Illinois made it look.
Yeah.
But I think when we look back at that, it's like, you know what? There was flaws on the defense, and those flaws were obvious and things that needed to be better. But man, those offenses really had a lot to do with that as well. And I think Washington notwithstanding that, to me, I don't want to go back to that Washington game and keep talking about that. You're worried about DeMond Williams as a runner. I get it. I absolutely get it. He was doing more damage with his arm than he was going to be doing on the ground. Like, just go try to rattle him. And you've seen the rest of the games when teams have heated up DeMond Williams, it's not been as easy as it was for Washington against Illinois.
I can understand that as the base plan, contain him, because that's worked against Norris Sellers. It's worked against Jalen Daniels. But you can't just keep doing that every play. Like, there's got to be your concern about him paralyzed your players. It just paralyzed your players so that day where Gabe Atkins, Matthew Bailey, all these guys just didn't play free, didn't play fast, and they just didn't make plays. So that was just terrible. Like, at some point, you just got to change it up a little bit, get more aggressive. It just never happened. All right, number 4, this offense for Wisconsin is brutal. It's just brutal. What's the key in keeping this Wisconsin offense down?
Initially, that is slowing this Wisconsin offense down. Like, just show up. They'll already be at a good slow speed for you. Stop the run game. That's what it comes down to for me. It's the best thing this offense does. And I'm going to tell you, that's still not particularly great. They're 17 of 18 in the Big Ten in rushing offense. But in the last 2 games, they're averaging 113 yards on the ground. Still not really good. But if you can bottle that up and make a true freshman in his second career start throw the football, like, you are going to take that 100 times out of 100 if you're Illinois. If Wisconsin can run the ball and control the clock and keep limit the possessions for Luke Altmaier against a really good Wisconsin defense, then you might run into a little bit of something, right? If you can't get on the field with this offense and try to score the point. Wisconsin ran for 157 yards against Washington on 47 attempts, and they won the time of possession battle by 3 minutes. 3 minutes, that was enough to keep DeMond Williams off the field for another drive. And that is everything when you have these talented offenses. So you've got to make a freshman make a mistake, and you've got to try to heat him up. And to do that, make those 3rd and longs tough. Stop that running game. They're hurt at running back, man. The injuries have mounted really at a lot of positions on the Wisconsin offense. But running back, quarterback, that's really where you've seen that start to pile up. So just make a quarterback throw, make a young quarterback throw, and don't let him control that clock.
They're averaging 6.7 points per game in Big Ten play. They're averaging 246 yards per game this year, 4.25 yards per play. Just to put that in perspective, Minnesota's second to last at 5 yards per play. They're second to last at 302 yards per game. You mentioned they're rushing. They're the worst in the Big Ten at 3.1 yards per carry. Now, Carter Smith coming in hasn't really thrown the ball, but he does give them an option runner. They like to do a lot of misdirection here. So really, for me, it's a lot of eye discipline. But yes, it's about forcing 3rd down, Joey. Like, force him to throw the ball and disguise and get after him in the backfield. Like, you're going to have to be on the lookout for some trick plays, because I think Wisconsin has to, whether it's special teams and fake punts like they did against Washington to get their biggest pass play of the game. They have to do things like that to get creative, just be disciplined and tackle well. And yeah, I think this defense has been pretty good against the run the last 2 weeks. So I'm pretty encouraged about it, but just got to be on the lookout for some of those trick plays would be my biggest thing, because that's what Wisconsin has to do right now. So if you bring the defense you brought against Maryland and Rutgers, I think you'll do just fine.
Yeah, I agree. You've got to, whatever you need to do defensively to make sure Luke Altmaier gets enough possessions, because you're going to have to live to fight another day against Wisconsin on Wisconsin's defense sometimes, right? Like, they're going to come up with stops. That's a defense that's probably not getting the love it entirely deserves because the team is such a mess right now. But if you factor that with limited possessions, that's when, look, you bring up the Bears, I'll bring up the Packers for a second. Like, teams do that. They try to stop Jordan Love and the Packers offense from getting on the field, and it just gives you so little margin for error. Yeah. And I think Illinois' offense can be in that same situation.
All right, Joey. Number 5, what concerns you about this Wisconsin defense, which is playing pretty well? Held Washington to 10 points. I don't know how that happened based on what we saw in Seattle, but it happened. And then They held Indiana to 10 points in the first half, just down 10-7 early in that game. So what concerns you about the Badgers defense?
Glad you said you don't know how that happened. I looked and I tried to figure out how that happened. Wisconsin can get after the quarterback.
Yeah.
Like they are third in the Big Ten in sacks or fifth in conference play in sacks. Against Washington 2 weeks ago, 34 quarterback pressures. 34. That is a huge
You can
number.
bring pressure against Demond Williams.
As it turns out, I think that it's been where he has struggled is in you've heated him up. Wisconsin is fifth in the Big Ten in quarterback pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. The Indiana stat I teased earlier, Indiana's first. Indiana has 214 team quarterback pressures. That is the most ridiculous thing. That's an absurd amount. Penn State is number 2 with 186. Michigan has 100.
Research we didn't tell each other, by the way.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Oh, we really, man, I was,
you wasted
dang, what a shame. We really wasted our time here. Michigan, third, 156 pressures. Washington has 160, and Washington 166, Wisconsin 160. If there's a knock on Luke Altmaier, who's been awesome, it's he can hold on to the ball for too long sometimes. And when he gets hit while he's holding on to the ball, that thing can come loose. A disaster scenario is he's holding on. One of those edge rushers, one of those freshman linebackers knocks that thing out, and you've given a not very good offense, good field position to at least get 3 if they can swing that. So Wisconsin will come after. I would imagine they're going to try to come after Luke Altmaier because I think this is not going to be a game that Illinois can fully lean on the running game to control the clock. And I think Luke Altmaier is going to have to make some throws, and they're going to heat him up. And that's just kind of a bad mixture for a quarterback who's had some hold-on issues and a defense that's going to come after him.
And a quarterback who wants to be aggressive, quarterback who wants to make plays. I don't want Luke to be conservative by any means because you don't want to hamper him. He's such a good playmaker. But I don't want him to get bored with a punt. It is fine to punt a few times in this game. You do not probably need to score 30 points to win this game. So Luke Altmaier's got to have that mentality that every possession, the ball matters. Ball control is going to matter in this game. And Wisconsin's defense is really good for the most part against the run. They really started the year really well against the run. Played some tougher opponents. It's been a little bit more difficult for them. But they can get you in 3rd and long, and they get after the quarterback, man. Reiger's a really good edge rusher. Sebastian Cheeks, familiar name from Evanston that Illinois recruited right when Bret Bielema got here, went to North Carolina, transferred in. Robertson, their edge rusher, is really good. So they have some good edge rushers, as Wisconsin always seems to have, and they all seem to do well in the NFL. But then their linebackers, man, Mason Posa is a dude. Looks like he's going to be a future first-round pick in a couple of years. He has completely changed that defense. Reminds me of a Jack Campbell when he was young, just all the plays he makes all over the field. Cooper Catalano, freshman linebacker, Illinois recruited really heavily. He's really good. So that front is good. And if you get in a 3rd and long, man, they're going to get after you. And I would just say, Luke Altmaier, it's okay to throw the ball away. It's okay to take a sack and to punt the ball. You just cannot give up the ball. You cannot let that defense, 1, score or 2, set up their offense on a short field. It's okay to hand the ball back to your defense, let them make a stop because they should make stops against this Wisconsin offense. So that's my biggest concern is turnovers. Because if Illinois has the same amount of possessions as Wisconsin, I don't see any way Illinois loses this game. The way Illinois loses this game is they turn it over, Wisconsin steals possessions like they did against Washington, and put their offense on short fields to where they can just run it a few times, make some field goals, get it inside the 10, score a touchdown like they did against Washington for their lone touchdown in that game. That's the recipe for Wisconsin. So offense just controlling the ball is going to be important.
Yeah, conversely, and I thought about that. The good news for Illinois, Wisconsin does not get takeaways. They have 6 total takeaways this season, 1 fumble recovered, 5 interceptions. Only Purdue? No, that might be worse.
Illinois has worse, it feels like. They forced
Michigan State and Wisconsin are tied for last in the Big Ten with 6 total takeaways. So it's not like this isn't Maryland that comes in with some absurd takeaway number, but Wisconsin can make you pay on like they need those. That has to drive. Takeaways would have to drive the Wisconsin offense, because I am with you. I don't think that if all possessions are equal, that Illinois is going to really that Illinois would lose this game. But Wisconsin can make it frisky if they can get home a couple times and really turn the game on the defensive side.
The good thing is if you do protect your quarterback, Wisconsin's secondary is suspect. So Luke Altmaier, if he gets time, he can pick apart this Wisconsin secondary. Last one, Joyce, number 6. Give me an Illini player you don't want to go overlooked down the stretch by fans watching.
Do you want to lead this one? I have a name written down. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page with you. So I want you to lead, and I will follow suit.
Yeah, we could just say Luke Altmaier, just enjoy him the last 2 games because these are the good old days for Illinois quarterback. Andy Bernard would say. I think Juice Clark is a guy that don't overlook his impact on this defense as he really settles in. I know he hasn't had a takeaway here, Joey, but he's tackling well. And over the last 2 games, 9 receptions on 19 targets with 3 PBUs. I thought he could have had a star turn this year. The injury obviously impacted that. But last year, the end of last year was a great foundation for him of what he could be, which was a starting Big Ten corner. Now he's become their best corner. And I think this end of the season is going to set up the Jaheim Clark senior year where he maybe asserts himself as one of the best players on the team and an NFL draft prospect. Because you need guys to turn into stars next year because you lose some. I think Juice Clark is that kind of player. So just his final games here, a bowl game against a good team. I'm just really interested to see how that trajectory keeps rising for him.
Yeah, I like that because he's their best defensive. He's their best cornerback. And by next year, when you lose Miles Scott, potentially Matthew Bailey, he's probably going to be their best defensive back, period. Right. And Xavier Scott, obviously, losing him as well. But I don't know what's next for Matthew Bailey. Is he going to declare for the NFL draft? Is he going to come back to school? Illinois would certainly have a plate full of revenue sharing ready for him if he were to come back. I don't know what his plan is. He's playing really good football. And I think that the biggest knock you could have on him right now is he's missing too many tackles. He had 2 missed tackles against Maryland. He's also had 10 tackles, right? The guy is just, they're kind of letting him be turned loose in such a lazy comparison. I do it all the time. And it's Sidney Brown just kind of be all over the place, trick him, don't trick him, drop into coverage, come after the quarterback, run support, cover the tight end. They're letting him do a little bit of everything. And I think his play in the last 2 weeks, as we've talked about this defensive kind of not even resurgence, just the defense playing better. He's had his hands on a lot of that. I don't want you to overlook what maybe this is the last 3 games with the bowl game of Matthew Bailey's career. Maybe it's not, but he's less of for a while early in the seasons with him, the last 2 with injuries, it's been kind of the idea of Matthew Bailey that is becoming realized. And I don't want a poor defense at times to overlook man, this dude, he's a really, really good football player. And he means a ton to this Illinois defense.
Yeah, he's got a fascinating decision because he has an injury history, but that might actually push him to the NFL because you don't want him to get injured again next year and to have what happened to Xavier Scott, right? And will be interesting to see what Xavier Scott does. Bret Bielema throwing out the nugget this week that he could come back for a bowl game. I'm like, would he? Would he want to if he's going to the NFL draft? Is he coming back? Because he could make a lot of money if he decided to come back, though he'd be an older prospect. So that'd be fascinating to watch. But Matthew Bailey's got an interesting decision. I think he would be drafted if he goes out, but it'll be interesting to see what he does. The other guy, and I asked about him this week, and I've raved about him on our film review this week, Tanner Arkin, man. He is such an important part of this run game. I know he dropped the pass. I know he's not a stud receiver, but you're going to see him get drafted in the day 3, and you're going to be like, really? Kind of like Tip Ryman when he went in the 3rd round. Tip's bigger, more athletic, so I think his draft ability was higher. But Tanner's was so good the last week, and he's been so good in the run game. I've said it over and over again. I think he's one of the best run blockers on this team, period. Even when you include the offensive line, which the offensive line is playing great, and you got 4 guys that you should appreciate. But Tanner Arkin, I just think it's worth another mention of how important he is to their run game and really, Joey, their offense has been so physical here of late.
He's going to a Shanahan tree, right?
Yes.
He feels like the most Shanahan tree player ever because I think if you want to go with the fullback, I think he could knock the heck out of people from the fullback spot. It just feels like we'll see him at San Francisco next year. That's just how I think of Tanner Arkin, and I know the receiving numbers aren't there, but there's NFL offenses. We've seen it with Tip Ryman. that as long as you got one tight end who can catch, they are all aboard. The other guy just being an extension of the offensive line in the run game and maybe catching one, maybe lining up as a fullback. That feels like his future is to go do that.
Just one of the toughest players you'll see. I would never want to hit that guy. He's just a freight train. Anybody else you want to mention before we get to our picks click?
No, you nailed it on Luke. I'd throw Hank Beatty in there. And we say don't overlook. Of course, you're not going to overlook Luke Altmaier. Of course, you're not going to overlook Hank Beatty. But time sucks, right? And time's running down on those two in college football. So just really don't take, especially Luke Altmaier, for granted.
Special
What
senior
he's
class.
doing.
Now, you think of senior day, and I was saying, like, who do we write about? There's so many great stories in this senior class. I'm sure we'll hit on more next week, but Altmaier, Beatty, Tanner Arkin, Josh Kreutz, and Josh Geske being that kind of in-between class. Davis and Priestley, what great finds those guys were. Gabe Akis, one of the best evaluations and better recruiting wins they've had. Dylan Rosiak being part of that in-between class. Kanena Odeluga, Bret Bielema's first in-state guy, potentially Xavier Scott and Miles Scott, Matthew Bailey. Like that's just a really special senior class that has left its imprint on winning here, especially these last 2 years.
Yeah, cosign, all of that.
Yeah. All right, pick to click. Offense, Joey. Who you got?
Well, we can't say Hudson Clement anymore because he's clicked the last 2 games.
Good.
It does feel we could. I won't. We could. Feels very much like a Colin Dixon game is in the works. There's obviously the layup of a storyline. Decommitted from Wisconsin, ends up at Illinois. But if you just look at the way this offense has gone, Clement's had his last 2 games where he's been that guy. Hank Beatty hasn't had that big game in a little bit here. He's an awesome decoy. For as good of a receiver he is, he's a really good decoy as well. Feels like we're just kind of next up would be that Colin Dixon game. It's more of a gut feel than anything. And as you mentioned, if Luke Altmaier has the appropriate time, and we should say, I wish I had brought this up when we had in the last point, the offensive line's protected him very well.
Yes.
Like, this is not the offensive line of early in the season. They've protected him well. So, yes, they can rush the passer. We've got to give the offensive line credit where it's due, and they've really kept him clean. So I have to assume that if you give him time, Colin Dixon will find himself somewhere for a chunk play at Camp Randall, and that'll be, for storyline vantage point, that's a fun one for people who cover Illinois.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, and it feels like every wide receiver kind of has their time, and of those top 3, like Beatty had huge games early. Dixon in the middle of the season had his big time, and then Clemens kind of turned it up. Yeah, so it does feel like it's going to switch here again. This team show more attention to Hudson Clement here. I'm going to go with another guy in the passing attack, and we didn't have him the last 2 weeks because he had an injury and came back last week, had a couple catches, but I think Illinois is going to pass the ball a lot more. So I think this guy's going to be in the game more, and Luke Altmaier looks to Cole Rusk a lot. So I just think against those young tight ends, maybe stress them a little bit. They get aggressive. So it might be some quick passes over the middle to Cole Rusk in the seam. I think he's just going to be involved a lot more because I do think Wisconsin's going to hold Illinois' running game in check way more than the last 2 opponents. I don't think Illinois is running for 200-plus yards in this game. So you're going to have to pass the ball more. That means more Cole Rusk. And I think he kind of continues what he started in the middle of the season with another big game.
Yeah, I like that. And it feels like that's been building. And I talked to Robbie Disher this week when I asked about Tanner Arkin. I thought Christian Abney had a very nice game against Maryland, and all those guys are healthy. Like, that is a physical position. And even if you're not on the injury report, that doesn't mean you're as full health as you can possibly be. And he said all those guys are starting to get healthy. We're not seeing the tugboat formation that I spoke into existence early in the season, but you are starting to see more just different ways to produce an impact out of that tight end. Rusk would be your receiving threat. And if Luke Altmaier is under pressure, I think he's going to look up and try to find 14 somewhere on some of those throws. And Rusk has earned the right to keep stacking snaps.
By the way, I think we were on the right track last week with our pick-to-click offense. You picked Khalil Valentine, who had 20 carries. I picked Caden Fagan, who had 96 yards from scrimmage. So I'll take the win there with the touchdown, but your pick was right with Khalil getting all the touches. We knew it was going to be the running backs last week. This week, we're leaning more into the pass catchers. Last week, you nailed it with Torrey Cox Jr., man. That's a pick-to-click that definitely nailed it. Tanner Heckel, didn't think he was bad, but just didn't get a lot of action his way. I did miss a chance for an interception, though, man. He had the opportunity, just needed to go get it. All right, so who's your pick-to-click defense this week, Joey?
We're staying in the secondary. The secondary that had really caught a lot of strays, right, for the better part of the season. Miles Scott feels like an interception could be sitting there. Jeremy, there were so many interception possibilities that just floated against Maryland. At some point, you've got to convert those. And I think if you can slow this run game down of Wisconsin, as we talked about, and make their quarterback push it, he does not push it down the field. And now this sample size is incredibly small, just given the way that quarterback roulette has rolled in Madison. If you can make him throw, this is kind of designed for a Miles Scott to be waiting on one and to come up with an interception and a play. And, I feel like he's been a lot more steady really since that Purdue game and not allowing big plays. I don't think Wisconsin is going to come up with a lot of big plays regardless. But it feels like this could be turnover opportunity for Miles Scott.
Yeah, I don't hate that one because, man, a young quarterback against a veteran free safety like that seems like an advantage for Illinois. I'm going with Angelo McCollum because Jake Renfro is one of Wisconsin's best players, and Cincinnati transfer, really great center, but he's out for the season with an injury. Their centers have been really poor. They've given up a couple sacks, a lot of pressures. Their center, Davis Heinzman, 13 pressures allowed, 4 sacks allowed this season. And Angelo McCollum is just really rising up here. So I think he's got a great opportunity to be very disruptive in that backfield, whether it's a sack, pressures that just mess up the run game or just get this young quarterback, feeling the heat. I just think there's a great matchup for Angelo McCollum, who's kind of like Juice Clark, one of those guys who you think of next year, he could be one of the best players on your defense and one of the most disruptive.
Yeah, he's really come along really, really well. And he's passed Kurt Neal as a starter. I guess that goes back and forth. The snaps are pretty even. When you bring in a transfer like Kurt Neal to have Angelo McCollum make those even snaps tells you a lot about his growth and what he's done. I think he does have good pass rush value. I know Terrence Jamison will always say their goal is to stop the run, but you've seen a little bit of an interest in more pass rush value in the last couple of years from that nose tackle spot than what they got early in the Bielema tenure, and McCollum fits that.
All right. Bold predictions, Joey. What's your bold prediction on offense? Hold on. We got last week you said 3 touchdown passes for Luke. Came up short. I had Illinois runs for 200 plus yards in the second straight game. Nailed that one. All right. So what do you got?
You did nail that one. Credit to you for nailing that one. I feel like I lean on touchdowns a lot with these, and they're so easy to do. I'm trying to go off a little bit here. One of the not top 4 wide receivers scores a touchdown.
You got Mario.
Don't know why. I don't know. It might be Ashton Hollins. Might be Ashton Hollins. I don't want to specify who, but it won't. What I'm saying is a touchdown out from the receivers outside of Hudson Clement, Hank Beatty, Colin Dixon, and Justin Bower.
I'd rather you call your shot with Alexander Kapka Jones.
Okay.
No, it's fine. That is a bold prediction, Joey. That is a very bold prediction, so I would go with it.
Doesn't it feel like there's always that one moment where it's like, where did this guy, I think of like the Jonah Morris catch against Iowa and a touchdown, but there's always like Ashton Hollins is somewhere open. Maybe this is a Kapka Jones moment, but one of those non-top 4 receivers gets one.
We've really leaned into the pass game with our picks and bold predictions here. All right, Wisconsin's secondary, they've allowed 13 plays of 30-plus yards. I think Illinois is going to have to pass the ball a lot. I'm going to go Altmaier, 3 passes of 30-plus yards, which is a lot in a single. Those are some big chunk plays. I think he's going to get sacked a few times because this Wisconsin defense is pretty good, but they're aggressive. And if he gets protected in one-on-one coverage or there's a secondary breakdown, I think there's going to be a few of those. I think he's going to take advantage of it with a few really big chunk plays. So I got 3 passes of 30-plus yards.
We missed the opportunity. We probably should have had some sort of bold prediction with Luke Altmaier as a runner. Like, is there a chance he's a leading rusher this game?
Potentially. I'm just interested to see how Wisconsin covers it because the last 2 teams have not really looked to cover it.
It seems like Wisconsin will be interested in covering him as a runner.
Yeah. So this isn't the week. It probably should have been a week ago that we leaned into that a little bit more. All right, defense, bold prediction. What do you got?
Well, I did not get this far.
All right, I'll go with mine.
Yes.
Young quarterback, force some third downs. For the first time this year, 2 interceptions in a game for Illinois.
Okay.
right? They've only had
That's
3.
Yeah. Duke. What was it? It was
Rosiak had one in Big Ten play.
USC.
Yeah, that's it. Had Tanner Heckle and Miles Scott. 3 interceptions this year.
Miles Scott had one?
Last week.
Oh, yeah, the Hail Mary. Oh, yes. You're right. I like that.
2
Feels like
interceptions
that
feels pretty
moment.
bold for this crew, but going against this young quarterback, and I think the run defense is good enough that they'll force him to throw.
Yeah, I really like that. I wanted to take some sort of sack number here. I don't really know how good I feel about that, but as you mentioned, centers given up some pressures, or tackles have given up pressures. And when tackles give up pressures with Gabe Akis on the other team, I like that. I don't know that I'm going to specify a certain player, but yeah, 4 sacks for the Illinois defense.
I like it.
4 sacks.
I like it.
I wanted to do one of them might be Joe Barna, because Joe Barna is the most, like, before Bret Bielema gets to Illinois, Joe Barna is probably in Madison right now, right? Like, he was very much that edge rushing, suburban edge rusher that Wisconsin has absolutely crushed with.
Yeah, I mean, Colin Dixon would have been in Madison, right? Like, I'm trying to think of other players that could have been. I don't think Wisconsin was too involved with Caden Fagan, but a lot of those suburban edge rushers, man, and offensive linemen and defensive linemen, a lot of those defensive linemen that they've gone on and gotten. Yeah, now you get Wisconsin defensive linemen and outside linebackers transferring to you instead. It's amazing. Freaky Friday gift, Joey. That's what this game is.
Crazy world, a lot of smells.
Crazy. All right, that'll do it for us here on the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a rating review wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, and hit the notifications bell. That'll be very important because on Saturday night, we'll be podcasting live after the Illini game, recapping what happens against Wisconsin. So if you hit that notifications bell, it'll go to your phone and you can join us live, which we always appreciate you guys doing. But for Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.